Bear News Reality. Cut through the noise. See what's really happening. No spin, no script. Just facts and fire.
Welcome back to Bear News Reality. This program contains news reporting, analysis, and commentary intended for informational and educational purposes. We do not promote harm, violence, or illegal activity. Our goal is to explain events, examine impact, and hold systems accountable. Today is about Mark Kelly, a retired United States Navy captain, a combat veteran, a former astronaut, a sitting United States senator, and what he said was not radical, it was not partisan, it was not dangerous. He said that if you wear a uniform, if you carry authority under the power of the state, you are required to follow lawful orders, and you are required to refuse illegal ones. That is not an opinion. That is not politics. That is the law. Every service member is taught that from the first day they raise their right hand. Every federal agent swears an oath that traces back to the same place, the Constitution. Not a president, not a department, not a commander, the Constitution. And yet, Mark Kelly is the one being punished for saying it out loud, not because he was wrong, but because he was the only one they could reach. Mark Kelly was not alone in that video. He appeared alongside Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, a former CIA analyst and Army intelligence officer, Representative Jason Crow of Colorado, a former Army Ranger, Representative Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania, an Air Force veteran, Representative Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire, with a national security and intelligence background, and Representative Chris DeLuzio of Pennsylvania, a former Navy officer with national security policy experience. They spoke together because this was not a personal belief. It was shared doctrine, shared law, shared responsibility. But every other person in that video is a civilian, fully separated, untouchable by military jurisdiction. Mark Kelly is retired. That distinction is everything, because retirement creates a gray zone, a narrow jurisdiction that exists for call, for serious misconduct, for national necessity, not for silencing lawful speech. And that gray zone is exactly what was exploited. The Department of Defense under Pete Hegseth chose to stretch that jurisdiction beyond its purpose, not because Mark Kelly broke the law, but because he reminded others where the law draws the line. Pete Hegseth did not accuse Mark Kelly of giving an illegal order. He did not accuse him of inciting disobedience. He did not accuse him of undermining a specific mission. He accused him of undermining discipline. And that accusation only works if discipline is defined as obedience without limits. But that is not how the American system works, or at least not how it is supposed to work, because the phrase, "I was following orders," has never been a defense. Not at Nuremberg, not in U.S. military law, not in civil rights law, not anywhere in a constitutional system that holds individuals accountable for their actions. Mark Kelly did not invent that rule. He did not expand it. He did not reinterpret it. He stated it. And that statement applies far beyond the military. It applies to the National Guard. It applies to Border Patrol. It applies to ICE. It applies to U.S. Marshals. It applies to FBI agents. It applies to anyone who exercises power under color of law. Different uniforms, same oath, same constitution, same legal boundary. That boundary matters now because people are watching federal force used against American citizens in real time. Hypotheticals, not theory, not history lessons. People have watched federal agents shove civilians to the ground. They have watched pepper spray deployed. They have watched batons swing. They have watched firearms discharged. They have watched conflicting official narratives issued after the fact. And in Minneapolis, Minnesota, people watched a man disarmed on a sidewalk, restrained, and shot by federal agents. That is not lawful under any constitutional standard, not under the Fourth Amendment, not under federal use of force doctrine, not under any legitimate interpretation of self-defense once a person is subdued. And when people ask the obvious question, when was someone supposed to say no? The answer is uncomfortable. They were supposed to say it before the trigger was pulled. That is why refuse illegal orders suddenly became a problem. Not because it's wrong, but because it interrupts a system that depends on speed, ambiguity, and obedience. This is where the real accountability lies, not with Mark Kelly, but with Pete Hegseth, who is enforcing an obedience-first culture and treating legal restraint as weakness. With the Department of Justice, which is defending borderline actions instead of stopping them, arguing loopholes instead of enforcing limits. And with Donald Trump, whose administration benefits from pushing authority to the edge, acting first, forcing lawsuits later, and pulling back before permanent precedent is set. This is a known strategy. Push the law as far as it will bend. Act quickly. Let the courts chase you. Retreat before the Supreme Court can close the loophole forever. Preserve ambiguity. Repeat, even when they lose procedurally, they win practically. The force has already been used. The message has already been sent. The chilling effect has already landed. That is why Mark Kelly mattered, because he spoke before illegality occurred. He named the stop condition. He reminded people where obedience ends. And for that, he was targeted, not because he endangered the country, but because he endangered a method of control. The irony is that what Mark Kelly said protects service members. It protects federal agents. It protects soldiers from being turned into scapegoats when the law is broken from above. Because when an illegal order is carried out, the person who gave it rarely pays the price. The person who executed it does. And that is the part no one wants to talk about. So when politicians try to frame this as undermining the chain of command, what they are really saying is that they prefer silence to accountability. When they say it politicizes the military, what they mean is that legality interferes with authority. And when they punish the person who stated the law, they reveal who is actually afraid of it. Mark Kelly did not break the law. The lawbreakers are the ones stretching jurisdiction to punish speech, the ones defending force that cannot be justified, and the ones pushing power until the courts force them to stop. This is not anti-military. This is not anti-police. This is pro-constitution. Because a system that punishes people for reminding others to refuse illegal orders is a system preparing to issue them. And that is why this matters. That is why Mark Kelly matters. And that is why the heat is on him. Because he was the only one they could touch. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. If you like this story and you like honest, hard truth and facts, and your feelings weren't hurt, please subscribe to the channel, like, and share. This is Bear News Reality.
Bear News Reality. Cut through the noise, see what's really happening. No spin, no script, just facts and fire. This is Bear News.